This morning, we're going to be starting off with labor matters, certainly. I mean, how can Workers' Day pass and workers like us will not talk about it? Well, we're being joined this morning by Mr. Laolu Akande, a former presidential media aide. Mr. Akande, it's always very good to see you.
Good to see you always.
Is this still okay to say happy you?
Good to see you always.
Is this still okay to say happy Workers' Day to you?
I think so, at least the hours are still quite close.
Have you joined us in comradeship?
I've always been a comrade. I mean, just look at my beard.
You know? No. So people who don't have beards, what are they supposed to do now? Even we're about beards. About beards. What do women do?
No, I won't. Just kidding. But I've actually always been a comrade.
Well, yesterday we saw the comrades gather in different parts of the country, in Abuja here, in the different state capitals, making their demands and, will I say, extorting or exacting promises from government leaders at different points. Here in Abuja, the president says, I've heard you, he was speaking through his Minister of Labor and Employment. But Labour, nonetheless, very loud in their demands, what they're asking for. Some of it including a return to civil rule, to civilian or democratic rule in Rivers State. So also bringing in national matters into some of the demands that they are making. Right. What did you make of the celebrations yesterday?
Well, it's quite an opportunity for us as a people to celebrate Workers' Day and to remind ourselves, in my view, of what is the missing link, in the workforce in our country. We don't pay good remuneration at all, by any stretch of the imagination. And like the politicians who say, the government and the private sector pretends to pay workers a decent salary, and the workers at some point also pretend to receive good salaries. But the truth of the matter is that people are poorly paid in this country, extremely poorly paid. And if you look at what the government has done, for instance, trying to sort out the issues of judges, paying them the right salary, that's the right thing to do, and I commend it. But we should take it all the way.
Like it needs to trickle down.
Yeah, you need to take it all the way. You have to pay people a living wage, a truly living wage. We shouldn't reduce it to conjecture whether it is enough or not. There should be a way for us to be able to measure that this is what is decent, that people can live a normal, basic life. And
I like how you put it. You said, government pretends to pay workers a living, and the workers in turn pretend to receive a living wage. And that's what has actually, some people say that's what has fueled corruption.
Absolutely.
So we hear all of these scandalous stories, and it's no longer strange to us. Take for instance, what we're hearing from NELFund, the newly established body, which is supposed to make sure that students are able to get loans and can continue their education, and when they're able to, can pay back. Even though we're now beginning to hear a correction of that particular story, I think a lot of Nigerians have already run with the first one, which is a discrepancy between what it is that government has put in so far, what has been paid to students, and what it would seem was not accounted for. These are some of the stories that and these stories are not strange to us anymore, because at the base of it are issues like this. Now, it's not a justification, but the truth is, if we haven't addressed it, haven't we given room for this sort of, this corruption to fester?
So, and that's the point, and thank you for, concluding my thought. So when we pretend to pay workers decent salaries, they also pretend to collect. It's because they know there's a way to beat the system, And the other thing, apart from the corruption, is the attitude to work. There are still very decent people, diligent people, in the workforce, both in the public and private sector. But you will find out that the attitude to work in our country is generally poor because people are not motivated. So look at what happened yesterday in the NELFund statement. a public statement, somebody forgot to do the due diligence. That's what they tell us.
They omitted the word not.
Big deal, and that is not the first time.
Yeah.
If you remember, NBS, posted a report and then deleted it. If you remember, JAMB, Kate Henshaw was correcting JAMB's public release, correcting their grammar. So you will see a certain pattern of lack of diligence in the work that we do, whether it's in private sector or public sector, more especially or more likely in the public sector. So these are the issues that we always come up with, besides corruption. And that's why we have to sit down really to understand that, look, whether it's as a matter of fact, it will seem that anytime we're talking about issues of wages, the private sector is always, the ones that say, no, we can't afford it, we can't afford it. We can afford it, whether it's private sector or public sector. We can find a way to make the workforce more productive, to be motivated. For instance, what happened to taking care of the accommodation? I mean, if you can't give somebody cash because it's going to go with inflation, how about housing, provide for their housing, How about doing something that takes care of the payment of their children's education? How about giving them health care that, that they basically don't have to pay for if they don't have the money? There are a lot of things that we need to do as a people to really get serious with ourselves.
And Kelly and I raised this issue of, this is part of the workers' demands that they be allowed to work till they're 65. And I was saying that, when I was growing up, it was that workers wanted to retire early.
Yeah.
People were given the option to retire at 55 if they wanted to, and they were happy to. But now, workers are the ones making the demands to work.
I want to work more.
I want to work
for
more.
longer.
Because the working, the jobs are not really there, and then when people leave the employment, it's a big problem to even get their pensions right, and there's a lot of struggle, So what I'm saying is that both in the private sector and the public sector, we must look at how do we take care of the average worker. If we can't pay them the salaries that is enough, okay. How can we find options to take care of them? We know their needs. When I was
listening to Labour yesterday, it did feel like Mohammed Dingyadi was saying something, and then the Labour unions are saying something else.
Two different conversations.
Yeah, it felt like they were having two different conversations. And it really struck a chord, because even if now we're saying, look, let's take care of workers, let's pay them, where is the money going to come from? And Labour has said, you're not addressing the real issues. Our manufacturing, agricultural sector, the places where, as a country, we're supposed to make money from, are moribund. And then for some reason, we have workers who are, even 70,000 naira is not realistic. We heard them say that yesterday. You can't live on 70,000 naira.
Yeah.
It's such a chain reaction of mistakes that have been made in the past. The chickens have come home to roost, and now we're looking at the situation and thinking, oh, can we give money? Can we do? Where is the money going to come from? That's what government will ask you.
Please.
What's the way forward with this one?
Let's make this point. We should never accept the argument that there's no money. We should never accept it. We should never. Because the political elite, when they want to do something, they go fetch the money. They go fetch the money. And I don't want to sound too critical. We can point our finger, to this idea. They get the money when they need to get the money. Nigeria has the resources. We have the potential. Look, do you see the level of corruption that is going on in our country? So if people weren't greedy, do you know how much impact some of those monies we make? I mean, do you know the impact that 1 billion naira that somebody can just steal cavalierly, casually? Do you know the impact that it can make in the life of people in the rural areas, poor people?
How do we?
We have the money. And please, one more point. And we also have the potential. Do you know the level of illegal mining that is going on in this country? Unregulated. Did you see the amount of oil theft that is going on? Nigeria has the money, but we just haven't found the right, determination to say, look, let's just do things right and let us run an efficient society.
How do we move the money from these places to real economic sectors and better the lives of people if people are benefiting from a corrupt system? Is it if we start to punish people? What can we do to move that money from these coffers and these robbers and move it into where the people get better? How do we make that transition?
Well, you know, government has to be very practical. I'll give you an example. So when I was in government working with the vice president, that was what was called the Economic Survivor program, you know. So yeah, the ESC, Economic Survivor Committee, that became his Economic Survivor Plan after COVID. And the vice president and the team that he led in government, they came up with a lot of ideas that can really turn things around. They say, for instance, look, we're going to build, government is going to calibrate the situation where we're going to build 300,000 new houses in this country. Okay? And you know what will happen when everywhere you turn the whole place into construction sites? You're supposed to get the money from CBN. You know, CBN is supposed to organize the funding. And the guys sat on it and gave the guys a family home fund. Some of them are still there. Gave them a run in and run out and run in and run out. Turns out that maybe they were able to do, you know, I think Bono did about 8,000, and then altogether just a few thousands. Because one guy, and I can say it publicly, the guy who was the central bank governor wasn't interested in that. The guy was cutting other deals. So when we tolerate corruption and the impunity of it, what happens is that you cannot do the needful things. So we have the money in this country, we have the resources, we just need the organization. There's no reason why we couldn't have in Nigeria free healthcare. There's no reason, absolutely no reason. Which is another thing that the Buhari administration did just before they finished. You know, again, the vice president chaired the committee where the idea of health insurance was developed and said, look, if you don't have money, the government and that system will pay. Because when we get the money, the government will put in a contribution, and then the people who can afford it, we also contribute. Everybody, just like in America, you'll be compelled to be part of the insurance, and we can take care of people. People can go to hospitals and get treatment and not die of typhoid. All of these things are there. We can do it. Some of the work is already done. It just requires us to have the political will to say, let's go and do it.
Yeah, I do know that when I listen to Professor Alipate, I always come up feeling like, you know, something is being done in that regard. I mean, when you listen to him, you cannot but help but feel that something is being done. I mean, he talks about the cancer institutions that have been built and treatment centers, etc., etc. But sometimes when you also listen to the plight of Nigerians, everyday Nigerians, from time to time you hear people, oh, this person is ill, they're raising funds to, and then you want to say, you know what, why don't you try? But then even you're not sure because you've not had to use it in a while, so you're not exactly sure, but you know that this is what you're hearing. Is it that there is a gap between what government is saying? Because as Kayla noted, she was saying that it seemed that the Labour Minister was having a different conversation from the Labour leaders. From your own experience, you know, while you're saying some of these things now that the government you worked with tried to do, you know, some of it already started, but clearly the gap between what government wants to achieve and where the Nigerian people are is still very, very evident. What needs to be done to reconcile the efforts being made on one hand and the experiences of people?
Well, I mean, it's just, in my view, you know, there are quite a few things, but the most important thing is just the political will of the leaders. And I don't want to just say it's just the president, because the governors can do quite a lot that they are not doing now. You know, yes, the president must lead from the center, the president must give examples, you know, but a lot of these things are in the hands of governors. Let's look at an example. There was a story yesterday in The Guardian, and also in Power Newswire, that said that there is over 300 billion naira that governors are not assessing for basic education. Can you imagine that? Over 300 billion. When they break it down to about all the 30 states that haven't taken it, each of them will probably get about 7 billion.
Why are they not assessing it?
You know, well, because they said that they don't have the matching funds because they have to come up with 50% of it.
Okay.
You know, so governors are able to build all these huge infrastructures all over the place, and they can't afford 7 billion to be able to take additional 7 billion and use 14 billion to transform education. And the Minister of Education actually wrote them a letter, which was published in the papers yesterday, that said, look, this is the kind of numbers. If you collect this money, if you get this money, this is the kind of transformation. This is the kind of teachers that you can train in just 3 months, 14,000 in the case of Ogun State that was reported. You know, this is the number of classrooms that you can build, about 5,000. But governors, about 30 of them as we are speaking, they say, well, we don't have the matching grants.
You know, there was a statement that was made by somebody in government one time, Mark, when the person, it was about education. And he was talking about the same sort of thing you're talking about right now. And one of the things he said, I think it was the Emir of Kano. And he said, listen, you have to think like a politician. Education will take 10 years to show results. Meanwhile, as a politician, you're trying to do things instantly that will be seen. You want to be able to cut tape. You want to be able to commission this, commission that. So most of the time, especially at state levels, you see a lot of developmental projects, in quotes, and it's basically commissioning. They want that photo up. I built this road, but when you say things that are not very tangible, like education, that takes time. It takes about 10 years for you to see the turnover of something like education. So in many ways, how do we get governors to start to think about long-term legacy projects as opposed to instant commissionings that we can take pictures and put in the newspapers?
Yeah, and it's the only way that we can secure the future of our country. So we are having problems of insecurity. You have a lot of people that are not educated, who are willing to be employed to do crimes and to do insurgency because they didn't go to school. They don't know the left from the right. You have people in some parts of the country, some teenagers. They used to tie a bomb around them, go and blow yourself up because there's no self-awareness. Human capital development is at the basis of any other kind of development. And look, if you want to do a show, you can do a show. You just have to be innovative. It's not only when you do infrastructure that you can do a show. You know, there are dilapidated buildings all over this country. You can start to build schools. I mean, whatever you're doing, you can make a show of it. You just have to be. Look at what we did, Empower. There is nobody in this country that didn't know that there is one program called Empower. You know, and it's not contract. I mean, it's not infrastructure. It's just getting and the people will be excited. The people, they will trust you. They will develop a resonance because you are touching their lives directly. If we don't take care of human capital development issues, health and education, we haven't started. We haven't started, you know, and that is the sacrifice that leaders must make to understand that, look, the people are the most important ingredients for development. Yes, we should do infrastructure, but we can't live. Look at the kind of things that people are dying about. It's heartrending when you imagine. People are dying of typhoid. Malaria is killing people in our country, and it's sad.
It is really heartrending. I mean, and one will, sadly, you know, these issues of development oftentimes do not sell. The issues of good governance. I see a number of, you know, newspapers and I see a number of, you know, media houses try to bring these issues to the fore. But sadly, they're not the ones that hog the headlines, unless you're intentional about it. It is usually the political defections. Oh, this person. And those are the things that these days, too, you cannot discount social media. Those are the things that get the people excited. Emotions, you know, start to flow as to... Drama, exactly. Drama of it all. And I'm wondering how it is that we can make this, while the politicians are wondering how they can quickly cut tapes, how we can make these issues exciting enough for people to want to, for politicians to take note, to know that, look, these things are important. And for also the people to know that these things are the things that keep any society sane. If you do not have health, you do not have education, your society might as well not exist.
And that's the point I was making, that, look, so it depends on the intentionality of the people that are doing it, the leaders. You know, we can get them excited because it's about their lives. Do you understand? So yes, you may have to be innovative, you have to think through it, but we can certainly, because when they see that you are touching their lives. You know, I mean, look at when we were doing, and I'm, you know, it's interesting I'm bringing up all these experiences because I have seen that these things are doable. When we did trader money, you know, and the vice president will go to the market, you need to see the excitement.
Now, what happened?
Excitement, huge.
What happened after? What, because these programs,
yes.
What happened? There was no continuity. Did they end? Yeah. What happened?
So the problem, well, you know, since you brought it up, the problem was that in 2019, the president decided to take the thing to form a ministry, you know, which wasn't a bad thing, and then put somebody who had no experience, who was not involved in what had happened up until 2019 to head the place.
So they moved all those things to the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs?
Yeah, so they created a new ministry and put it there. And then, you know, I would have thought, and this is my own opinion, that, yes, the president, you know, wants to change strategy. You should have used the people, get somebody who was involved in this thing from 2016 to 2019, when the thing got a lot of accolades nationally and internationally, to head the place. Or get them involved. You want to bring somebody who had no idea whatsoever. And then
but there's a new minister there now.
In controversy.
There's a new minister there.
Yeah.
These programs are still in the Humanitarian Affairs Ministry.
Hopefully.
Is there any conversation going on about their continuation?
Well, there is. I know you're posing that to Laulu. I do know that right now that there's a committee which the Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy is supposed to be heading to take a look at some of these projects. This, especially this. I'm looking for the word.
Trader money.
No. There's a word they use for all of them collectively. Social investment programs, you know, to look at their effectiveness and see how they can be collectively revamped. So I do know that is going on. It's unclear, you know, just when that committee will finish sitting, how long they will sitting for, and things of the sort. But that we know that this, especially after the scandal with the last minister.
Right. And my point was actually just I used that to say that you can do some of these projects and get people excited. I want to emphasize the responsibility of governors. You know, governors are sitting on a lot of money and doing very little in terms of human capital development. They are doing very little in terms of health. They are doing very little in terms of education. You spoke of what Professor Patel is doing in health. He will need to carry the states along because that is where the people live. You know, so we need to talk to governors to really sit down. They need to get involved, and they can show. There will be stuff to showcase when they start to do it. The problem is that because procurement for infrastructure seems to be much more, you know, readily available, you can make a lot more from it, and that's corruption. That is what is driving it. If you give the people, look, when we were doing social investment and we were giving people, you know, 5,000, you know, 10,000, there was a lot of excitement from the people. As a matter of fact, that was what we used to win re-election in 2019 in this country. It was the social investment program. People, wherever we were going, people came out.
There was controversy about that one.
Yes,
people were saying, oh, that was vote buying pre-election. Organized vote buying. Let us not, you know, remove the message, take away from the message to the governors. You know, Mr. Laulu Akande's message is to the governors this morning to prioritize the Human Development Index, HDI. And for the governors that are doing so, we're more than happy to help showcase it.
Yes.
This is advertising for us. Well, if you are really doing something, I'm sure it will speak for itself. And I'm sure that also...
look at us talking about the Minister of Health.
Yeah.
HMOs right now are calling you to ask you if you're getting the health care that you're asking for. When you go for chemotherapy, at least in Abuja, it's at a reduced, it's about 10,000 naira per session right now. And these are, so if you're doing something, we will see that you're doing something.
So I think it's a fine place to leave it. And Mr. Akande, we have to thank you always for coming on the program.
Thank you so much.
So Laulu Akande is a former presidential aide. We're going to leave this segment now, but we will not stop talking about development with our next guest, so please stay tuned.